I come from the technical side. So UI, UX design and all that is not my specialty.
I think video AI has been around for a long time. I mean, Hanwha
sure.
is probably pretty far ahead in terms of doing video AI. Are you guys also bringing in the video AI features into your access control?
We can't fully talk about, but AI tools that we run inside of the product management team, we've got some AI tools that we run on the development side. I think that it definitely helps in the data management.
Do you think Aliro will have an impact on the industry?
It's not been there on the credential side, particularly the mobile credential side at this point, right? That's been a constraint.
Do you believe that there is a need or there is a scope for an open standard for a software system to talk to a controller panel?
There's so much flexibility, but also different functionality that exists at the hardware level that having a standard, you would almost start to constrain because the standard would only allow for so much. And then as soon as you build hardware that was outside that standard, you've now got to figure out a way to handle that elegantly.
Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of Physical Security Unlocked. Today's guest is Chris Wilson. So welcome, Chris, to the show.
Thanks for the opportunity. Good to talk to you.
Yeah. So Chris is currently with Hanwha, but has years of experience in the industry, physical security industry. So for the benefit of our audience, Chris, if you could just spend a few minutes introducing yourself and telling our audience about your background.
Sure. Yeah. And again, appreciate the opportunity to join and have a chat today. So I've been in the security industry for 26 years thereabout. I actually got involved early in security as part of a Y2K project. So for those that were around then, rolling over from the 1999 to the 2000, and things weren't sure if the software was going to keep ticking over. So I got involved with a project back then, spent the first round about 15 years on the systems integrator side. So started out as a tech, boots on the ground, pulling cable, doing installations, worked up project manager, design engineer, service manager, operations manager. And then in 2014, had the opportunity to pivot my career, started doing a little bit of consulting as well as working for some manufacturers. So I've done both direct work for manufacturers, in the access control space, the visitor management space, the video surveillance space, as well as consulting for manufacturers and end customers, and even training some integrators on the technical side. So today I work for Hanwha in the product management team over there. So it's been good to get back on the manufacturer side, and I think that experience in 26 years has lended itself well to many of the spots that I've ended up.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've seen it all, right? I've been in the industry way lesser time, and it's the physical security industry, right? So just about 6 to 7 years. So I've just seen the new part of it. You've seen it. You talked about Y2K, which goes way back in time when we had this peculiar software problem. Today, software is evolved. So how have you seen the industry? I mean, at a high level, how have you seen the industry evolve? What do you think is really changed in the last 20 years?
Wow. It's a completely different industry. We just recently got back from the ISC West show, and I think I've been to every single one since 2011. And while I know there's a lot of people that have been there many times, many more times than that, that's 15 years of ISC West at this point. And I really think about the industry there's been some sort of major inflection points, right? I think there's the transition from analog to digital, right? When I started in the industry, we were 232, RS-232, RS-485, very much a, legacy type of a protocol, right? So I think that transition was an inflection point. I think the on-premise to cloud element has been an inflection point. And again, facilitated by IP, right? If we didn't have that transition IP, that transition would not have been possible. I think the introduction then of mobile devices was an inflection point. And I'm clear to say that I don't think it's just mobile credentials. I think that's a part of it, but even just the concept of a mobile app was a differentiator as well in the space. right? We had on-premise software, so the idea of a mobile app was a totally different concept. And then most recently, and I think where we still a bit need to understand where it's headed, is sort of the AI, machine learning
Yeah.
realm of technologies. And again, I say that as it's not just one technology; it's a whole suite of them. So yeah, I think there's really been those kind of four inflection points along my career in the industry for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. AI is currently the um, talk of the town. Everybody talks about AI and how AI is being leveraged. So we'll spend some time on it later. But just focusing on what your role is today at Hanwha is, what are you guys doing at Hanwha? If you could let our audience know, because
Sure.
everybody knows Hanwha is a camera company, right? Before camera technology company. So what are you guys doing in the access control space, and what is your role in that?
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that. I still get a lot of questions of people going like they know a lot of my background has been in the access control, and it didn't make a lot of sense when I went to Hanwha. And I think the differentiator is, so September of 2025, sort of around the GSX show timeframe, we launched the on cafe, on cloud access for everyone access control platform. And that's powered by a software platform that we built from the ground up, purpose built, cloud first, as well as some controller hardware that we built ourselves, and again built those from the ground up, as well as some great partners, the Azure Access, Altronics, Wavelengths partners in the market. And I think that's been, I'm on the product team that came in to build that product, get it released, get it launched, and then work to scale that as we grow into the market. So I think it's part of the Hanwha Vision, changing that persona of who we are from a camera company and a VMS, right? We've been doing that for probably 30
Yeah.
plus years and knowing that quite well, into more of a solutions delivery company and access control and other solutions as a key part of that.
Yeah. So, are you guys primarily cloud native? You guys also plan to do or do you guys offer a on-prem access control? It's or purely cloud?
Today, it's purely cloud. It's I think there's a lot of people that's the key focus. We do have a sort of a standalone SMB commercial type product, that's sort of a standalone entry guard that runs on the controller itself, which helps to solve a lot of problems for a lot of customers. But the on cafe platform is purpose built in the cloud, and there's a lot of functionality and benefit to be gained there. And that's the
Mhm.
platform is focused in that direction.
Yeah. And do you see that the initiative from Hanwha to do an access control is because of the trend of video and access control kind of coming together, that they felt the need to have an access control? Do you see that as a trend in the industry, that
Mm.
these two things are coming together?
Massively so, and I think that's right. So I think, kind of as we talked about those inflection points in the industry, I think you've had, for years we've talked about the integration, right? The integration of your access control and your video surveillance, and there was a storyline of, look, when somebody taps a card at the door, you can see the video that's associated from the camera, and I think that's a great story and a relevant piece. But I
Hmm.
think the underlying part is, if we build those systems even more closely together, more interoperable, now we start having a common shared data pool, right? And each of these systems, ultimately what they're doing is creating data. And I think that's the data points around the facility, around the identities that are navigating that facility, the employees, the visitors, everybody. If it's multi-housing, the residents, their visitors, right? So there's a lot of different data points that start to get created. And I think that's that unification of these systems that
Hmm.
allows us now into ultimately better data management. And I think that's really what we're getting to, is managing the data in a better way and using the data from the access control and the video together in concert to make decisions and make things happen, as opposed to just truly at the fundamental level linking an access event to a video bookmark. While that's great and is great, there's so many other things
Yeah.
that can happen at the data level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with AI, I think it is very important that you have a rich data set of information where you
Yes.
can now leverage AI. I think video AI has been around for a long time. I mean,
Oh,
Hanwha is
sure.
probably pretty far ahead in terms of doing video AI. Are you guys also bringing in the video AI features into your access control? I saw your demo. It was mostly looked like a traditional reader controller access control. But are you also bringing in the cameras to really do access control on the go? Are there anything like that you're working on?
Definitely, right, and some of that obviously we can't fully talk about, but I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
the idea there is that AI as a general, right? So we put it in the access control. You can build schedules through natural language processing, right? We can type that out. Things like AI report generation is on the roadmap to come, where I can tell the system what I want it to do, and it can create the report, right? I think those are the easy parts, but absolutely, AI from a video standpoint, and how do we use those data points? How does it detect anomalies and detect things like tailgating or other entities, and be able to feed that back into access control? And maybe we change how the system behaves based on those parameters, or what's going on. So 100%. I think we'd be silly not to think about that, but yeah, certainly it's been discussed
Yeah, I just
for
wanted to
sure.
make sure. I'm pretty sure you guys are working on it as a video first
Sure.
company. I think that's something that you would definitely do. But now, you being able to do access control just opens up so many other possibilities of making the camera just do more than what it was doing. Right, the same camera can do more stuff now.
Yeah, and I think it's about thinking of a camera as it's viewing what's happening in an area, right? And now we're able to more interact with that area through the access control, right? So we're talking more inputs and outputs. So where cameras are, and we've got some basic inputs, outputs, and functionality there, but using that camera as a sensor, as an input mechanism, as a data point ingestion, and being able to then take action in a facility, right? It starts to open up just what's possible, and there's so many things that we can start to see, being possible as connecting those two systems together.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of AI productivity, I know everybody is using a lot for improving productivity. How is your experience personally been in terms of, you guys, did it help you guys build this platform much faster? Did you guys leverage AI to build the solution? And how was the impact on your development cycles?
We did. So we've got some AI tools that we run inside of the product management team. We've got some AI tools that we run on the development side. I think that it definitely helps in the data management, in the allowing a developer to just write a question in a natural language to say, is there a user story that asks me to unlock a door, and being able to extract that data point, right? I think even and again, that's a extremely basic example, but being able to use AI tools like that makes it so much faster to be able to build and turn things around, create features, write requirements.
Yeah.
I think the important part of all of that is the human in the middle part, right? I think that it's important that we've got it. It's the point you made earlier, right? It's about that data set, and I think it's also important to understand the data set that the queries are going against, but also making sure that there's a human that's knowledgeable to validate the output, right?
Yeah.
And check that before we just start dumping code into somewhere or off and running
It's
somewhere.
it's probably, I think many people say it's probably the best time to be a product manager today, because you can real it's like you can I tell our team, you can realize your dreams much faster now than before, because
Oh,
before
for
it was
sure.
like you put it on the roadmap. Okay, this is going to come out next year. Today it's like, okay, next week. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and even basic things, right? So I don't do, I come from the technical side. So
Yeah.
UI UX design and all that is not my specialty. But even that, I can, I've got tools and resources where I can explain, and then I can hand that over to somebody on our team that's fantastic at UI UX, and they can take their expertise and just refine it and make it applicable to our platform. And it's far easier to just communicate what's going on and what I want, taking it out of that mind's eye and into a tangible thing that it's easier to share, that I think really helps teams to move faster, and how we can share information.
Yeah, yeah, really exciting times. So switching gears, I think one of the mostly talked topics in the industry is, you touched upon it, is mobile credentials or
Hmm.
smartphone-based access, right?
Sure.
I think it's been talked to for at least more than 10 years now, I would say.
At least, yeah.
But I would say what we see, certain parts of the industry, their penetration is higher, but at a high level overall, it's, I would say, pretty small. I would say single digit. percentage, right?
Yep, I
Penetration.
agree.
What do you think? What is general opinion on mobile credentials? What is going to drive it adoption, or what has not been helping driving the adoption today? And
Mhm.
maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, I think that my view, the number one problem that we have today is we're thinking about mobile credentials as a replacement for a card, and I think that's the fundamental crux of where we're going a bit wrong. And I think it's the messaging of people aren't going to leave their phone at home, but they might leave their badge. I had a conversation this week, right? Somebody's driving to the office, they're halfway there, they realize they forgot their badge, they're going to continue driving to the office and figure it out. If they get halfway to the work and realize they forgot their phone, they're going to turn around and go home and get it. And so I think that's a valuable story to tell and make sense. But at the same point, I think that's just day one of what a mobile credential can do. I think ultimately it's about we know who they are, we know more about this person, and now we can start to change that overall user experience. And I think there's technologies and standards that are coming that can help to facilitate that. And I think some of the adoption that we have seen has been in places like higher ed is a great example. We have the generations that are getting into those higher ed are expecting mobile first
Yeah.
type technologies. And so I think that user experience connects to the adoption. And I think that's ultimately where we as an industry have to continue to drive that user experience conversation, not just it's a card replacement, right? Yes, it is, but more, yes and type conversation.
I think user experience is one of the keys. I would definitely agree that it has to be
100%.
because the card is the benchmark, right? So it cannot be worse than the card. It has to be better than the card experience for anybody to say, "Hey, I like it better
Yep.
than my card." And obviously the cost comes into picture. So how much am I going to pay for this experience, right?
Yep. I have to get the value, right? If I'm going to be paying more, I need more value than, a $5 card or whatever that value is. If you want $10 for the mobile credential or whatever that number is, I need exponentially more value to want to pay for that typically.
Yeah. And I mean, this ISC West, I think Aliro was the talk of the show pretty much. A lot of
Heard a
people
lot
had
about
the
it.
Aliro demo. So do you think that's a good step in the direction of adoption of mobile wallet? And what do you think Aliro will have an impact on the industry?
Yeah, I think that again, I think it ties to that user experience, and I think that's the benefit that it's going to bring. Is it's providing that interoperability. It's one of the things that when we built our hardware, that open. I'm not even going to use the term open architecture because it gets a bit ecosystem ready, right? I think it's that type of interoperability that is massively important and what people are looking for, and it's not been there on the credential side, particularly the mobile credential side at this point, right? That's been a constraint. And I think Aliro starts to break down some of those barriers or gives a path to breaking down those barriers to facilitate that user experience, which is, again, ultimately what I think is going to drive the adoption, but also ultimately what customers want. It's as a product manager, we have the jobs to be done idea, right? And it's like, I used this example recently where customers don't want a 1/4-inch drill bit and a drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole, right? They want the outcome of that, not the tool that gets you there, right? So most customers actually don't really want a mobile credential. They want the experience that a mobile credential gives them. And I think that's the fundamental shift that standards like Aliro can start to drive that pivot.
Yeah, I think you brought up a very good point about interoperability at different layers of the stack. Like I've had this few conversations and pretty interesting ones with some of the folks in the industry where you talked about the open architecture concept, right? But being a truly open system, you need interoperability, and that means
Bingo.
systems are open in true sense where it's published. So Aliro is a spec. You can become a member, get the spec, and
Exactly.
start implementing it. And now any phone or a card can work with any reader, irrespective of the manufacturer. So that's the user to the device layer which you're talking about. But there are multiple layers, right? So there is a reader to the controller layer. I would say that has been fairly open. Maybe you can shed some light on that. So you talked about RS-232, RS-485, Vegan is an interface, and then OSDP is another now
Sure.
interface which is more secure. I mean, they're kind of open standards, I would say, right? Uh, but they've been unsecure for a long time. Do you see OSDP being the open standard for interface between reader devices and panels?
Yeah, I think it's a great step in the right direction. An OSTP secure channel was massive, right? And I think that it's exponentially better from the weekend standard that we were all using for quite
Yeah,
some while, right? And Hanwha's got the OSTP verified. We're supporting of that standard, but we've also had conversations with OSTP committee to say, what else can we do, right? How far else can we push this standard? There's certain baselines, and then there's sort of a manufacturer defined element that can exist. And can we expand that standard to say, actually, we need these other components and elements in there? And so, I think they're at a great spot today, but I have also, and again, I've shared this with the OSTP committee that I think there's also opportunity to improve that, right? And continue to grow that. And I think that's just part of the standard, right? Every standard exists and then grows and evolves and changes. And I think that's just part of it. And they've been on a fantastic
yeah,
trajectory
absolutely.
and super receptive to the conversations. And so we appreciate that, and then just
Yes,
continuing to
yeah,
push
it's been
that
great. Yeah, we've been working with them for OSDP, so
for sure.
yeah, it's a great initiative. So going up the stack, right? So I was just going up through the stack. So that's now you reach the panel, which is the control panel, which is kind of the heart of the system. Now this access control panels talk to software systems,
Hmm.
right? And that is where majority of this open versus closed discussion happens. So,
Yep.
do you believe that there is a need or there is a scope for an open standard for a software system to talk to a controller panel?
Mm. I do, right? I think that there's opportunity there. I think that's part of the stack and part of the flow that there's not a lot of trajectory on that standard that I'm aware of at this point.
Right.
I've heard a couple of people that have mentioned sort of like attempting to work on that.
Yes.
From a Hanwha perspective, we've got the Sunapi API that's in our cameras that is an open published industry standard, industry document that if various companies want to tie into the cameras, they can use that. We put that exact same Sunapi API in our controllers. I think that's how we think about open. That's how we think about interoperability.
Yeah.
I think we don't we don't want to have a proprietary panel that says, look, it's only us. Do we want you to use our software? Absolutely. But we also are very well aware that there's some other great softwares in the market. And when customers have landed on one of those and it's the right fit for them, but they need a hardware solution to fit with that, that's where we want to be able to deliver that. Just the same way we've played nice with all the ones on the video side. It's the same, it's the same
But the
engagement on the
but
access
the
control.
challenge I see today is that everybody says that their standard is the standard, and there's no one standard which would say,
Bingo.
hey, this is the standard, right? And if you be part of this standard, you are truly open because you don't have to contact the manufacturer of the panel to be able to integrate. It's out there.
Yep.
Just pick it up and plug it in, right?
Yeah. I think the challenge is been there's so much flexibility, but also different functionality that exists at the hardware level that having a standard, you would almost start to constrain because the standard would only allow for so much. And then as soon as you build hardware that was outside that standard, you've now got to figure out a way to handle that elegantly, right, as part of a standard. And I think that's
Yeah,
been
that exists in OSDP in a way where there is
exactly.
flexibility to put custom messages in the OSDP frame.
Yep.
So you can send like a custom file or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
I think could be probably handled something like that where you have custom frames for manufacturers to use.
Yep, exactly. And I think that's certainly one way to do it. And I think that's where we work with OSDP to try and enhance the base standard and not move all that into the custom element. But at the same point, I think there's absolutely a standard format, right? Everything's going to have inputs, outputs, and readers. If you're doing access control, you're going to
Yeah, I
need
mean,
those elements.
that's
So
pretty
let's
much it.
cover the basics
Yeah.
in some sort of a standard. And I think that's what customers, in my opinion, customers need the ability to select their software and then figure out the hardware that they want to make it run, right? And if they want, you know, an 8-door enclosure in a closet in a traditional manner because they've got legacy cabling or they want to drop something on PoE at the door, it shouldn't matter. And I think their software should
It's
be able to
like
support both sides of that.
it's like buying a Wi-Fi router of Amazon and just plugging it in,
Yeah,
and then you connect your laptop to the network, and it just works. Like, could that be a philosophy that's just you buy hardware, you plug it in, and then you just use whatever software you want and just start working?
sure. Yeah, and there's a lot of standards, right? Wi-Fi is one, Ethernet is one, right? The AP8C connector for Ethernet, you know, HDMI, shout out to Andrew Campagnola and the baseballs, and have a standard on how they're designed and built. Stairs, right? Rise and run of a stair tread. There's a lot of standards that exist out there. And I think that it's just important that we've got to get to a point where we could, have more of that further through that stack to the exact point you're making.
Okay, great. So coming back to the credential standards, we just briefly spoke about Aliro, but there are quite a few other initiatives in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been hearing about Peacock is one such initiative.
Yep.
Leaf has a standard for cards has been around. What's your opinion on all these standards? Would they coexist as standards, or what do you think about let's say Peacock or Leaf and Aliro working together?
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons of each, right? In how they're doing key management, what type of keys we're using, symmetric versus asymmetric. I think there's a lot of different pros and cons. And I think ultimately while it would be great that every site is going to have high security, asymmetric, certificate authenticated credential, I just don't know that we're in a space where in maybe even my career that a lot of sites are the vast majority of sites are going to go there. And I think that there's a place to have sort of a everyday mid-market standard, and then there's a high security type standard. And if customers need those applications, there's standards that can exist to serve. And I don't know that we're going to end up with one standard that meets everybody's need across the market from a cost and key management, right? There's just a lot of complexity that doesn't exist if you're a coffee shop with 2 doors. But if you're, producing classified equipment, then you need it, right? And I think that trying to think that we'd have one standard across that is not it.
Reality might be very different, that even a high security facility might be just using CSN based credentials, right? Nobody knows about. The management doesn't know that that's not a very secure way to do access control, but they're still using it because it's been done that way.
Yeah, there was a release of a very similar version of that was an approved standard at a federal level that got deprecated in like 6 months because they figured out, oh my gosh, this is not good, right? And I think that's exactly it. And I think there's an education perspective of that. Certainly having a higher security standard helps to, alleviate a lot of that. But, I think that the short answer for me is I think there's space in the market for both that you mentioned, the Leaf and the Peacock. And if they have slightly different customers and use cases, and that, that we don't need to just focus on only having one, there's space and capacity for both of those in the need.
Yeah, great. On the reader side of business, you see, I saw quite a few products at ISC West by some of the manufacturers who are integrating cameras into their readers more and more. There's 2 options. One is you have an exterior camera, what Hanwha has, or you have the camera in the reader. Do you see a lot of value with having cameras inbuilt into readers, which can do facial recognition and things like that?
I think at certain doors, I think it certainly does, right? I don't think that that every door needs a camera at the reader, but I think that there's certainly a lot of door types that having a camera built in the reader, it's a great viewpoint, right? It's a great vantage point for a camera to catch a frontal view of somebody, whether that's for facial recognition, detection, identification, or just general surveillance. It's a great viewpoint for a lot of that information instead of being up high, kind of looking down on the scene. But I also think that we don't need that in every single reader throughout an entire facility, that we need that much more video. I think getting into back to the data point, I think that there's a place for anonymized data, that we don't need the actual video feed. we need to know there's three people in there, not, it's Rowan, Chris, and Jim. It's that there's three people in the room. And I think that's where other sensors can also help to facilitate that from a data standpoint. But there's absolutely a need for, a great benefit to certain cameras being in readers.
Yeah, but I think that opens this concern about privacy. I think I would say, at least North America is concerned. People have been very vocal about privacy, right, as compared to other parts of the world where privacy, surveillance, and privacy is not the biggest conversation. Whereas
Hmm.
in US, it's always been like, is my face being captured and somebody's identifying me, and
Right.
how do you ensure that I see a lot more openness now, especially at airports. A lot of facial recognition is happening. People are kind of opening up to the idea that facial recognition is becoming um, more prevalent. But how do you give the user the confidence that your identity is not being compromised and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's an education perspective, right? And I think that's where biometrics are super convenient. They're very hard to impersonate. And I think the reality is that not all companies that I know of in our industry that are doing biometrics don't actually save any photos of the user image, right? In fact, that's actually a massive amount of data that they would have to store to capture the actual photo to make it something that they could refer back to at a photo level. And so it's more data points and templates that cannot be reverse engineered back into what this person's face actually look like. And I think that's just an education. I think that there's, again, a highly secure, highly convenient way to use biometrics. And to your point, I think there's a lot of people that in America that have been very much against it. Some companies have even, been burned by some of the regulations and things like that they were written in a way that was very, had a high penalty if you
Yeah.
did certain things. And I think the reality is that it's just a knowledge gap to the users, the actual users of the systems, lawmakers that are doing legislation, the companies, the marketing. I think it's just got to be telling the story better around what is it actually doing versus what is the perception. Hollywood's great at saying, like, it takes a photo at the door and it shows it in this database where it's pulling that up the live versus this reference photo. And it's like, that's just not how biometrics work in what we do at all. And great, I mean, it makes a great movie. I'll watch them all day long, but that's not what's on the door of a building, and that's not how it's going to operate. And I think I would love to see us get to that type of a space. But it takes a lot of education and telling the right story for people.
Yeah, great. So going back in time, and you said you started off as um, as an integrator, part of being have probably done some installations. Um, so tell me, what is the importance of resellers, integrators into the industry? What do they care about really when it comes to deploying access control or a physical security solution?
Yeah. So I think integrators are, they're the force multiplier, right? So us as a manufacturer, they're a pivotal point of, part of the chain and what we need to get that done, right? We're not going to have installation companies. Hanwha's not going to hire technicians and installers, right? And it's a key part of that, that channel, that chain to deliver these products, right? They want, products that work, products that do what they say they're going to do, products that are easy and intuitive to install. And then when there is some sort of a challenge or they need support, they want a manufacturer that's going to be there to support them. And I think that's really what they're looking for. I think they're resource strapped on finding technicians. We hear about this all the time. And I think that it's making their lives easier. It's making things better for them, making sure that they have the way to be successful and that they don't send somebody out to a site and then they can't complete their task, because that time is valuable. And I think that's, we understand that that's part of what their role is in that whole value chain, and delivering that ultimately to the customer and being able to tell that story on our behalf, because we can't be in front of every customer. And I think that's, it's an important part of what we got to deliver for them.
Yeah. Uh, uh, Remote provisioning, you guys, let's say an installer goes and does the installation, everything being done remotely. Is this something which I see in the industry is becoming a trend where you don't have to
Sure.
be on the side. I mean, does that help you, a reseller, do more installs and scale faster?
Yeah, I mean, I see more and more integrators where they have one or two people that are the programmers, right? And they can't travel around the country. And then either they send the field techs that are pulling cable and doing installs out to all those, and then they just call in and say, "Hey, I'm ready for programming," or they may even sub out somebody that's locally and can do that, right? It's still important to have that local presence because there's still things that need to get plugged in and wires connected and mounted on the wall. But then they're using that remote programming. And I think that's building platforms that facilitate that, allowing you to even pre-program prior to the installation and then just connect the hardware that gets selected. I think again, it's part of that resource management and making their lives easier to deploy them.
Yeah. I think I met you first, right, after, I think, one of the first few shows, IC West, after COVID, I think 2022. And at that point of time, it seemed like shows are going to be dead. I see
Mm,
like trade
yeah.
shows are no longer going to be
Yeah.
relevant because COVID. But the last IC West show was like amazing. It's probably the biggest booths I've ever seen, biggest crowds I've ever seen. So, how do you see trade shows, evolving? I mean, do you see them getting bigger and bigger?
I think that I totally agree, right? I think that there was a point in time when we all said, well, if we could do this remotely, why do we need to get together in person and have these trade shows? And I think that what people have realized and the realization that we've come to as an industry is that if trade shows are done correctly, and again, I think ISC West is a great one, right? There's an education element, there's networking opportunities, there's value delivered from the show, and I think that's what people are looking for. They want that. It's the same thing as what do they want from a system? They want the value, that they want the experience, and I think it's the same that it's there's amazing stuff to see on the show floor, but there's also a lot of things that are happening in the evenings and breakfasts ahead of the show and education before that. Again, they can truly get value out of that, and I think it's that keeps trade shows like ISC West around, to be able to deliver that. And again, I totally agree. I think it's one of the biggest ones I've seen, certainly, since COVID and potentially even pre-COVID. That it's always been a big show, but just the buzz, the feeling, even on every day of the week, till the show closed, just lots of stuff happening. So yeah, it's I think they're doing it right.
Yeah, I think it's been, for me, it's been a thing which I have to attend every year now. So for the last, this is my fourth IC. I have not done like 11 like you, or you said 2011, right? So
Yeah,
maybe
so 15. Yeah.
15 shows, right? Yeah, so, but I don't think I can miss any of the IC West because I think meeting the people, we are humans. I think this the face to face conversation is, I think, invaluable.
Yeah.
I think it's yeah. Um, I think finally, I would like to talk, maybe ask you a question about what's your, for the next, let's say, if you were uh, given the freedom to kind of envision the next 5 years of the physical security space, um, what would you like to see happen in the industry?
Mm. Well, I would love to see the standards get cleaned up and see some more direction in that, without a doubt.
Okay.
I think that interoperability needs to continue over that time period from hardware and software. I think that's a massive part of it. I think that what's going to be happening is things like customers are driving a software first mentality. Again, I used the example early. Customers want to pick their software, and then whatever hardware facilitates that, right? And I think
Mhm.
that's an important change in what that perspective looks like. And then lastly, I think some of the things that are going to facilitate that is the continued growth of AI, right? We went from generative to reactive, which is kind of interactive, where we're at kind of today. There's some early adopter space in that agentic space. But I think as we continue to see this AI evolution into reactive automation, agentic based APIs, autonomy, like I think that evolution
Yeah.
that's going to happen in that sector is going to drive more value, better user experience, and it's going to change how we operate as a manufacturer and installation companies and customers, how we're going to use these systems and get value, but even more value out of what they can do. I don't know that we're going to get all the way in 5 years, but I think that's the trajectory and the path that I see this
Oh,
industry
well,
evolving
AI
on
keeps surprising us. It moves faster than what we expect it to move
every day.
every
Every
day.
day. Yeah. It's like
So
you
I
pop
think
out and
might
you're
be
like,
well
oh,
within your 5 years that we are way ahead of what you're even talking about with the speed at which AI moves. So,
oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's 2026. So 2021, 5 years ago,
oh,
it
really?
wasn't even a thing. And now we're 3 or 4 steps. I mean, I think it was just a year ago I referenced AI as basically, as smart as your average house cat. And that's in a year later, it's evolved massively since then. And I think you know, that's evidence of what it can do. And it's just going to continue to grow as we
The
continue.
funny thing is, I've started building software now because I can use Claude and start building
Sure.
features without knowing. So, I mean, that's the beauty of it. Anybody who can think of product and kind of want to build something can build it today. So that's exciting.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we've got some of our team that have built prototypes. And again, we don't turn that into a launch product, but again, it helps us to deliver that to our engineers and they can either clean up and fix that code and use it as a starting point, or at least get a really, really clear picture of, oh, this is what you want it to do. As a PM, it's always trying to explain to engineering what it is that we can see in our mind's eye and what that looks like. It takes a lot of words and pictures and mock-ups and conversations where now we can use tools like a Claude Code to mock up a quick prototype and go, hey, make it do something like this. And they're like, oh, okay, got it. So we can make those things happen so much quicker.
Great. Great, Chris. I think it was a great conversation. Thanks a lot for your insights. I think the key takeaways for me is that I think you talked about open standards, interoperability, software first systems. I think this is something where I think industry needs to move, and we are really also hoping that happens. So, thanks for your time today. I really enjoyed our conversation. Wishing you all the best at your role at Hanwha and as a company for your
Yeah.
growth.
Thank you again. Appreciate the opportunity. Good to catch up as always when we always good to have some good conversations. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity and
Yeah,
yeah,
hope to
appreciate it.
catch up with you in person before the next trade show.
Same.
All right, thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Rowan.